This is my trim pump in my Haynes signature boat. As you can see, the bracket that holds it down is pretty well rotted. It's the same on both sides. In actual fact, it's that rotted that I don't even have to unbolt it to get it out. There's just one little stubborn one in the corner, but then I got it out. And this is the oil reservoir, which I've emptied into this tub, and look at the state of it. It's full of oil, water, gunk, bits and crap. Okay, so what we're going to do is try and test it and actually see what happens. So I've hooked a battery up to it. I've got a negative on there, and then there's a positive going around to the front. Got this little jumper which I'm going to put the pipes in. There's the pipes going around into a drain bucket. I'm going to flick this jumper in and see if it goes. And it works one way, doesn't work the other. It's not pumping oil. It is, in all honesty, a bit of a sorry state. So I'm going to have to shred this in bits and see what happens, see what it's like inside. So I've got the pump off, I've got the tank off, and inside the tank is this little pump. That's the pressure relief valve there. That blows when the ram reaches the end of the travel. This is a return, that's a return. And then the other two are pickups. One pickup's got a gauze filter on it, which is that one. The other pickup hasn't. When you knock that pump apart, you've got this little tiny gear pump. It's an oil pump. When that spins, it picks oil up, which goes around the outside of the house and around the outside of the gears, and it pumps it one direction or the other depending on which directions the motors go in. Down in the bottoms of those two pickup ports are actually some ball bearings which only allow the oil to flow in the direction that the motor's running. Otherwise it'd just go round in a loop, straight in the tank, straight back out again. So that's the oil pump. Now we've dragged it right to bits, got the two little gears out. I start putting it back together again after I've cleaned it all. Drop the ball bearings in. The long drive pump runs in the middle, which is offset, so that goes in that side, and then the other one goes obviously next to it. Give it a spin, all turns nice and free. Lovely cute little dinky pump that is. I suppose it hasn't got to pump vast amounts of oil, but there you go. So that's the gears back on. Then the top housing just drops, which all lines up straight back on there. Give it a turn, still nice and free. Lovely. Now I got these two little O-rings which seal it against the mounting flange. Pop those into place, and then there's, once you've got them in there, there's 4 Torx keys that hold this. 2 of them hold them onto the mounting flange, and 2 of them actually hold the pump together. So I'm just going to spin all 4 of these in. Once I've got the 4 of those in, I can flick the pump back over, and there's a couple of check valves which go in the top. So put that gauze back on. I've only got one, I've got to try and find another one from somewhere else. Okay, now there is a little drive coupler in the middle of that takes the drive from the motor onto that shaft, just making sure that spins. Now this is the check valve. There's 2 of these, one in either side. I'll just drop that in there. Bit of grease in the end of the bung which holds the spring in place while you put it in, and then you just wind that bung in until it seats up. Okay, and then once it's seated up, should be giving it a nip with a spanner. The general fits anything spanner. Just give that a good nip up. And then there's another one that goes in the other side. I've put that in, just giving that a nip up. Now just hold it firm on the bench. Just give those a good check in. That's it, that's that one. And that's that one. Now there's an O-ring that goes on the top of that, inside there, which seals the motor down onto the top of the plate. Put a bit of grease in there, just to hold that O-ring in place. And then that's your little drive coupler. Just drops in there. And that takes the drive off the end of the motor, which drives the pump. Now this is the motor. Took the top off of this. That's the brushes there. It's one runs off your green wire, one runs off your blue wire, and they're directional. So it'll energise one wire and it powers it, energise the other wire, it powers it the other way. Black wire is the earth. Took the top off of this just to really check it really. I know the motor does work, spins nicely either way. I also poured a load of Freon oil in it, give it a shook round and emptied it out, just to make sure there's no crap in there. And then it's just a case of lining up that little drive coupler at the end of the motor and getting it all to seat in. Now I've got the drive coupler in the wrong way round. Turn it round, drop it back in, and that's because the drive on the motor is slightly wider than the drive on the pump, so you can only put it in one way. It won't go together if you get it the wrong way round. So you're just going to get that in there, get the 2 bolts that hold that all together, a little bit of grease, and spin them in. Once I've spun those in, get them down as far as I can by hand, and then I think it's like a 3/8 spanner, just to give them a nip, just sort of sort of crimps it all up, pulls it all in together, and that's what holds the motor down onto the pump assembly. Like I say, it's just 2 little 3/8 bolts, not a massive torque, just enough to give them a nip and pull them in and tighten them down. Right, so that's the pump bit done. I'm going to start putting the bracket together. So I've got the 2 solenoids and the bit of wiring loom, and sort of put these on. One solenoid goes above the other. That wiring loom sort of runs in the middle of them. The wiring loom is held on with a clamp. That clamp, which bolts down to that bracket, is also held in place by 2 bolts which hold one side of both the solenoids, and it sort of so that the wiring runs in the middle and it goes just underneath the back edge of the solenoids where they meet. So it tucks down and it goes round behind the solenoids and then into place. I'm going to start putting some wires on the solenoids. You've got this little earth strap which links the 2 earth terminals of the solenoids together, and that sort of goes from one to the other. And then you've got the earth strap which goes to the side of the bracket. Just put all those on, run them in. This terminal on the outside of the bracket is also where you bolt the earth lead from your battery to the trim pump. Then there's like a little buzz bar part that goes in between the 2 solenoids. Then you've got like a square red block which is actually quite a large fuse that goes onto one of the terminals on the solenoid on the live side. You also then have the live feed to your trim control, which bolts onto that buzz bar as well. This one bolts onto the live side of the other solenoid. Now I'm just fitting the green and blue wires, control wires, to those two solenoids. Obviously one solenoid controls it to powers the motor one way to go up, and the other solenoid powers the motor the other way to let your leg down. And there you go, there's all the wires in place. Nothing's tight yet. I'm going to sort of get it all in and then tighten it all up in one hit. This is the motor. I've got the tank off now. There's a gauze on the end of there, I think I've said before. I haven't got it. It wasn't in there. But there is an orientation on which way the tank goes on. So I was just checking it in the bracket to see which way the tank goes onto the bottom of that motor. And on the bottom of the motor there is like a little fork detent. And then on the tank there is a little bit of moulded plastic poking up. And that moulded plastic goes in between that fork, which locates it in place. And then there's like a little 3/8 bolt which seals with an O-ring in the bottom of that tank, which holds the tank on, really. There is an O-ring on the top as well, which seals the top plate against the top of the tank, and then that little 3/8 bolt. So we're just going to give that a nip. No need to go massive with that, just a little nip, so it's all held in place. And then there's two 9/16 bolts in the back of that motor which hold it against that bracket. So I'm just going to take those out. I'd put those back in so I didn't lose them. That's a first for me. I normally lose every nut and bolt that I ever take out of anything. But take them out, put them back into place, locate, fix that pump assembly onto the mounting bracket with those two bolts, and then it's a so spin them in by hand. It's 9/16 spanner. Just give those two a good nip so it holds it all in place. Okay, now just getting the green and blue wire that run to the motor in position on the right terminals, connecting the blue wire to the solenoid that's being controlled by the blue control wire, and then obviously the green wire to the terminal, the solenoid that's being controlled by the green control wire. Then the black wire goes up round onto the side of the mounting bracket where all the earth terminals, and where the earth terminal is, where you connect the earth lead for your battery, which I showed you earlier. Now I'm just going round with a spanner socket, just nipping up all my electrical terminals so that they're all nice and nipped up tight, and I'm happy with it. So once I've done all that, just going around last few little bits, and then once I've got all these nipped up and everything, we're gonna start going through a bit of a testing, making sure that the electrical side of it all works. Now this number that is on the motor for the trim pump is not a part number. This number is a standard that the motor is made to, so that it's sealed, so any fumes from the engine bay or anything that cannot get into it to ignite, or if they do get into it and ignite, it won't explode, it won't cause a fire. It's very important. If you've got electric motors on boats, like your starter motor, your alternator and everything, they're all supposed to abide to this standard. So if you've got an alternator on a boat and you decide to go and get another one from a parts shop, from a car, it's not safe. Now this bolt here, I started trying to connect it up, and that bolt was a bad connection. So there's the bolt, it corroded, I wasn't getting a good connection, so I've replaced the bolt now, and I have now hooked it all up. So I've got a battery lead on it, positive. We're going to see if it runs by putting this little jumper cable into it. Now I've got some oil in the reservoir, 2 pipes on it coming round into this jug, and we're going to see if it pumps. Now when I first started to try and get it to pump, it wouldn't pump. I was a bit sort of like, couldn't understand why. So what I've done is I actually ended up having to submerge the ends of the pipe in the oil that's in the bottom of that jug, which then made the pump bleed itself, and then as soon as it bled, pumped like a good one. So I'm happy with the way that this pump's now working. So like I say, just submerge those and then give it a touch one way, sort of connect it up one way, pumps it one way, and then when I connect it up the other way, it pumps the other way. So it's all working, it's all good. I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching. It's another part of the boat done. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more. There's more going on, and hopefully we'll start getting a bit more done to the boat. See you soon. Thank you very much.